Good evening, and welcome to the live stream of the 2020 Natchitoches Mayoral and City Council Candidates Forum. I'm Tyler Magnano, Speaker of the Senate for the Student Government Association here at NSU. The SGA takes immense pride in our efforts to encourage our fellow demons to take part in civic engagement, vote in elections, and participate in the democratic process. We have partnered with the Natchitoches Area Chamber of Commerce to host this forum in order to engage our students and citizens of Natchitoches in the upcoming municipal elections that will greatly impact our city and university. We are honored tonight to host and hear from these mayoral and city council candidates. I will now turn it over to our moderator for the evening, President of the Natchitoches Area Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Laura Terrell Lyles. On behalf of the entire Student Government Association, we wish each candidate the best of luck in the upcoming local elections. Thank you, and as always, Orcam Demons.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to the 2020 City of Natchitoches Mayoral and City Council Forum. Thank you also to the NSU Student Government Association for hosting us tonight, and I want to give a special thanks to our candidates for participating tonight. We've already read the rules of engagement to them prior to starting the live stream, but I do want to go through them briefly with our at-home audience so that you kind of know the structure. Each candidate will have a 3-minute introduction, 3 minutes to answer each question, and 3 minutes for closing remarks. Our SGA volunteers will be holding up a yellow card that our candidates can see, indicating that they've reached 2 minutes and they have 1 minute left. And then they'll hold up a red card whenever their time is up. I will also be reminding anyone that their time is up or notifying them that their time is up. So just so you're not thrown off whenever I say time's up and you stop mid-sentence. That's what it's going to look like. So please pay special attention to the cards in front of you that Tyler will be holding. We had a total of 42 questions submitted, so I want to say a special thank you to all who exercised your civic duty by submitting questions. Obviously, we won't have time to ask them all, so we have prioritized them by grouping together similar themes, and I'm going to get to as many of them as I possibly can, and keeping to that 3-minute time limit is going to help us do that. We also mailed a questionnaire to all candidates back in February and posted their written responses on our website at natchitocheschamber.com/candidatesrespond. For your information, the topics of the questions that we sent out in the written questionnaire include budgetary priorities, experience, changes in reform, economic development, capital outlay, tourism, and safety and security. If you have not done so already, I would highly encourage all of you to read their responses and make an informed vote. And that website again is natchitocheschamber.com/candidatesrespond. Just a reminder that early voting starts this Saturday, June 20th, and ends July 4th, and Election Day is July 11th. Please get out there, go vote. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with our mayoral candidates. We're going to start in alphabetical order for your opening remarks. So we're going to start with Mr. David Keys, and then he will be followed by Mr. Lee Posey, and then finally Mr. Ronnie Williams. So we'll go in that order. And first, we will hear from Mr. David Keys, opening remarks.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you to both the Chamber of Commerce and the SGA for hosting this event this evening. I think it's great that Natchitoches takes an interest in their elections and that people want to be informed about the candidates who are running for their most important positions. We live in a strange time right now when qualifying was in January and then a campaign through March, and then we got delayed when the world seemingly started coming to an end. And then for many of us, we were sheltered in our homes, wondering if we were ever going to get to see our friends and family again. And just as we were starting to reopen, we all witnessed a horrible tragedy that also seemed to turn the world on its end. The unspeakable violence that we saw in that video and just the blasé way in which it happened was unacceptable to many of us and made us all question whether we can continue in this world the way it is. And the answer is no. we can't. But we have to figure out a way to move forward. When I started this campaign, my slogan was, "I'm proud to be Natchitoches." And I still stand by that. The reason I came up with that slogan is because Natchitoches is more than just the Christmas festival and Front Street and meat pies. Natchitoches is its people. And now more than ever, I'm proud of Natchitoches' people. We've shown strength and resilience. We've seen demonstrations that were peaceful when in many places they weren't. Our people here in Natchitoches are some of the best in the world, and don't you forget it. I'm proud to be Natchitoches, and I'm proud to be a candidate for mayor. And I hope you'll vote for me on July 11th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Lee Posey.
Thank you. I also thank you to the Chamber for putting on this forum. It's great for y'all to do this, to let the people see what's going on in our political process in our community. You're going to find out I'm not an eloquent speaker. I never have been. I speak from the heart, and that's the only thing I know to do. But I need to start out with some of the accomplishments for our community. We passed a rededication tax here a few years ago, and we put some things out there that we're going to do for our community, and that's exactly what we did. We spent the money where we said we were going to spend it. We've done things, we've improved water quality, our sewer in the community, drainage. We spent $10 million on street overlay projects, which is where we needed to spend some of the money. We've renegotiated city electrical contracts twice, resulting in city utility customer savings. The city park redevelopment project completed, making city pool handicap accessible and safer for all children, parking lots, extension of walking trails, pavilions, and restrooms. Park renovations at Ross Williams Park, Pearson Mallet Park, John Velo, and Frederick Richardson Park. Completion of Park Natchitoches, a state-of-the-art sports complex with 5 ball fields, 4 soccer fields, fishing ponds, and walking trails, with future development of pavilions, nature trails, and dog parks. A learning center for children at Grady Irwin is also in the works. Ruboport Riverbank Enhancement Project with ADA ramp access. Implementation of Town South Pan Am Access Road, addressing need for emergency access within subdivisions were blocked and railroad transport vehicles. And basically why I'm saying this all leads up into positioning our community for being successful. NLEP is a North Louisiana Economic Partnership for us in this region. It's out of Shreveport-Bossier area, but it's a leg of economic development that we use all the time. I don't know if I understand it, but it's the situation where with the virus going on, I wouldn't have thought this, but there's more economic expansion looking right now than ever before. And we want to position ourselves for success. We had some site selectors in here about 3 or 4 years ago, and the number one things they told us they look for in communities are education and workforce. They're worried about the crime and the quality of life in your community. We've got some areas that we've always got to be working on, and we're going to do that. But with the work of this team together, the most important thing we need in our community is jobs. It would help us the most to get good paying jobs. So with that, I say thank you, and that's my opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Ronnie Williams.
Good evening. I'd like to say as well, I thank the Chamber of Commerce, NSU, SGA, and all others involved in this endeavor. I think it is just a wonderful opportunity for people to get engaged with their mayoral candidates. It's just a beautiful process, and I think it's the way that our democracy is designed. I'm a longtime resident of Natchitoches. I've lived here for over 20 years of my life. Natchitoches is where I graduated high school. It's where I completed my secondary education degree here at NSU. Natchitoches is where I preached my first sermon. The church where I pastor and have been pastoring now 7 years is in this wonderful city. Natchitoches is where I met and married my wife, Tiffany Oyulo Williams, who is a graduate of the Louisiana Scholars College. It's where I find joy in raising my wonderful children. This is my city. This is our city. I'm running to bring good government back to Natchitoches. Somewhere, unfortunately, we've lost our way. I'm not really against Mayor Posey, and I'm not against David Keys. I'm for Natchitoches. I'm for transparency in our local government. I'm for improving relations between law enforcement and the local community. I'm for youth development programs that will build up our youth, not only physically, but also cognitively and mentally. I'm for improvement of our ailing neighborhood roads. I'm for bringing jobs that pay a livable wage by supporting economic development throughout all of our city. Throughout my time on the campaign trail, I have discovered that people want a government that they can voice their concerns, and their concerns are reflected in policy. I see a Natchitoches that has enormous potential and opportunity in every neighborhood. Many of the residents in this great city tired of the status quo. They're tired of the same old political schemes. They want good government. That's what the residents deserve. If I'm the next mayor of this great city, that's what I'll give them.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. If I could just have you stay up, we're going to go ahead and ask the first question, so that'll save us a little bit of time. And the order that will go in for this first question will be Mr. Williams, followed by Mr. Keys, followed by Mr. Posey. So the first question has to do with education, and there were several questions that came in about education at every level and how the quality of education impacts the likelihood of success as an adult. Since 2014, the Louisiana Department of Education created drastic changes in early childhood, which led our state to be one of the highest performing states in these efforts. What is your understanding of early childhood education, and what are your strategies to ensure all key community stakeholders are at the table to address concerns and ideas related to early childhood education?
Early childhood education is very important. Research suggests that if we're not giving kids a really quality education in their early years, then they're going to be left behind. I'm a teacher, so that tends to cause problems and disruptions, and it leads to children, unfortunately, going through a system that I don't think children should be, and that's the cradle to prison pipeline. We've got to do something about that. Now, as an educator, I've come to understand, I've come to know youth, I've been engaged with them in a way, and I think it's very important that we take the time to learn our youth, know how they learn. Now, obviously, we've got, a system of educating on we've got the Natchitoches Parish School Board that provides that early childhood education, but I think as a city government, we've got to work hand in hand with the local school board. Obviously, we got to also work with Northwestern and even our technical colleges. But we've got to work, since we're talking about early childhood education, we've got to work with the school board and city government to make sure that we are providing the programs that are going to keep our children engaged. School system has them from 8 to 3. After that, what are they doing? Many kids, what you call turnkey kids, who go home, the parent is at work, they have to fend for themselves and provide for themselves. We've got to make every effort. This is what I said on the campaign trail. We've got to make every effort to make sure we're seeking out those community development programs that are going to help to build up our youth. All right, we've got to make sure we get Boys and Girls Club back in our city, and not only that, but we got to have other programs as well. That's gonna, we talk often about sports, and sports are great. I'm a sports fan, but we've got to engage the mind of our children. Our children in this community, they want art, they want music. So there's a lot of other things that I think we can work together as city government to make sure we're fighting to get those grants. And I would challenge anybody who works for me to make sure we're looking for and researching grants and other types of aids that we can provide a quality education along with what the school board is doing.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Keys.
I agree with Mr. Williams that early childhood education is very important. In my current role with the parish government, unfortunately, I've seen the politicalization of an early childhood development program called Head Start. It's been kicked around like a football from the parish council and the parish government to save the children, and it's really sad when our youngest of the young are the ones who are being politicized rather than taken care of. Studies have shown as well that some of the lower economic households that children are born into, those children hear less words on average growing up than some of our more middle class and higher earners. This is something we need to focus on when we get these children into these early childhood education programs. We need to make sure that they're hearing more words that will stick with them as they move through the education system. This is how you establish the base that will provide success as you move up to junior high, high school, and college. But I also want to address, unless we're going to get a question later on it, the kids that are in junior high, high school, college. We need to stop telling these kids if they have a problem, whether it's disciplinary, grade-wise, athletics, that when they fail, they're a problem. We need to tell them that when they fail, they're learning, so that they can learn to overcome their failures rather than letting their failures defeat them. This is a problem we see way too often. We see kids not prepared to go to college, and when they get to college, they quit. Or they get to high school, and they quit. They never explore other opportunities to learn. So in early childhood education, not only do we need to teach them more words, we need to teach them how to overcome failure from a very early age and tell them that it never stops. The learning goes with you the rest of your life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. And last, we'll hear from Mr. Posey.
Thank you. That's a great question, because we have way too much poverty in our community right now. And the way out of this, in my opinion, is through education. The city of Natchitoches chose to do something, and I think I've been my second year here. I was a part of a group along with the Chamber and the Chamber Education Committee, along with some other people. We're trying to improve the education in our community. And we went around and visited early daycare centers. And when I visited those early daycare centers, I didn't see a whole lot of learning going on. There was a lot of riding of tricycles, watching TV. It wasn't the environment to prepare our kids. We brought in a man and talked to this whole community. We had 600 people at the event center down there to listen to this man talking about early childhood education. The brain is formed from 1 to 5 years better than any other time in a child's life. So we did something that's very unique that no other city in the state has done, to my knowledge. We hired an early childhood coordinator because for some reason at that particular time, there's a lot of things that have happened since then that have improved, but early childhood was not being monitored in the daycare centers, and it was just being overlooked. So we chose to hire somebody to go in there and work with the personnel to train them how to work with these kids. I am so proud of that Miss Amy Matoir is a person we hired. She's working with the school board. We have been recognized by the state of Louisiana for all the efforts we've done in early childhood in our community. We're ahead of the curve. Now everybody's jumping on early childhood, and they should. That's our way out. There's no doubt about it, because we've got to. Can you imagine? I come from a family of educators. Can you imagine, as a teacher, instead of 50% of the people that enter the first grade and possess the skills that they need to keep learning, if we got that number up to 80 to 90% of what that would do for our teachers in this community? A lot of people don't know this, but 6 years ago, Natchitoches Parish was ranked number 58 out of 64 parishes in our school systems in the state of Louisiana. That was absolutely embarrassing. We chose at this time to get involved to do something about it. I agree with all the other candidates. This is something we need to be involved with. We are now with the work, and I'm not saying we did it. The school board, everybody started partnering together. Right now, at this present time, we are ranked number 44 in the state. We've probably made more growth than anybody. Now, we had a lot of growth to make, but we've got a lot of room to still go. I'm never going to be satisfied till we get up in the top 20, and we should never stop from there, because the way out of it, a lot of our issues in our community are through education, which leads to workforce. Thank you.
I'll have you stay up there for our next question, which has to do with economic development. And the order that we're going to go for this is Mr. Posey, then Mr. Williams, then Mr. Keys. Everyone supports economic development, but how specifically will you and your office support this effort financially? Do you think the expertise for this work lies in the mayor's office, or is it best served through another organization?
Well, we're fortunate you have the Louisiana Economic Development Department for the state of Louisiana. They will do a lot of the issues of partnering up with some of the finances. The city plays a major role in it. We've got some things going on in economic development, like I said earlier in my statement, with NLEP that we haven't had in quite some time. They said there's more activity going on today than there was 3 and 4 years ago. So there's a lot of things happening, and Natchitoches is an important part of that. The city is definitely a big portion of that. When we reach out to the Economic Development Department for this, and NLEP does that, reaches out to the state, and we meet as a team to figure out how is the best way to make sure we get this industry in our community. When you're looking, I've got to sell them on the quality of life. That's one of the things they'll tell you. Things have changed. 5 and 6 years ago, when we met with these site selectors, it's different. They want a workforce. Through education, a workforce leads to jobs, which leads to economic development. And we've got to do more in that area. We're always working in that area to improve ourselves. It's just one of those things that's a must do.
Thank you, Mr. Posey. And next we'll hear from Mr. Williams.
Economic development is probably one of the most important topics that we will discuss on tonight, because economic development could be and is the great equalizer in our city and even really across the nation. It's able to lift people when they feel financially secure, when they feel as if they're a part of the community. It's going to lift them in some major ways. Now, through this process of running for mayor, I've learned that, we do have some great things here in the city of Natchitoches, and I believe we're on the cusp right now of moving into this next chapter. But if we're going to do that, it's going to take innovation, it's going to take inviting new ideas, it's going to take partnership and coalition building. And I'm the person, even though it hasn't been in government, it's been in education, it's been, as a clergy person, I have built coalitions, all right? And just to kind of talk about one of those is the NCA, all right? I've discussed this a little bit. The NCA has done some work, and I hope that we can fill that spot that was left vacant by Mr. Tony Davis real soon. The NCA has done some great things, one of which is, basically helped to bring or brought, Hobby Lobby that's coming to us very soon. And exploring their website, there's actually some pretty cool things that I'm not sure that everybody knows about. Something known as the AMT, or the Advanced Manufacturing Technician. It is a wonderful partnership with Northwestern and the Louisiana Technical College right here in Natchitoches, whereby a student applies for this particular grant. They can earn an associate's degree from Northwestern, but they get those manufacturing skills from the Louisiana Technical College. And so businesses are looking for not only your education, how strong are you in terms of, are you educating your students, but what types of jobs are we, how are we training our students, all right? A lot of people think, I've been in education for many years, a lot of people think that, it's a one-size-fits-all, try to put everybody through a 4-year college. That's not everybody. You can make a lot of great money, by going through a technical college, working in the manufacturing field. I think economic development is important. It's important that we develop all areas of the city of Natchitoches.
Thank you very much. Next, we will move on to a question about, oh, I'm sorry. Come on, David. I'm very sorry. I was just thinking, did I have everybody? Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Keys.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you for calling me out.
I hope the voters don't forget about me like you did. No. That's a joke. Economic development is very important. And it seems like every time I hear somebody talk about economic development, I hear them say, what can we bring here? And I'll tell you the truth, I'd love to see us get something like a Bass Pro or an Amazon fulfillment center right here in Natchitoches that provides jobs for our cities and also gives us places that are kind of cool that we can go to. That's fantastic. But what I rarely hear people say when they talk about economic development is, what do we have here? What is the talent that we have here? Who are our next entrepreneurs? I'm standing on a college campus right now talking to all of you. We've got fantastic students that come through Northwestern every single year, and the Scholars College, and the Louisiana School for the Math, Science, and Art, and the Technical College, and Natchitoches Central. We've got the entrepreneurs right here in town that can create businesses, grow those businesses, keep them local, and expand them across the state and across the country. I can think of a real estate company that started right here and has expanded throughout the state. I can think of a pharmaceutical benefits company that has started right here. Their company headquarters is here, but they're national. And I can tell you, one of my favorites is the Cane River Brewing Company. When they opened, I was thrilled. Natchitoches has a brewery. I don't have to drive to Shreveport because that's dangerous, driving back from a brewery. But then, a few weeks ago, I'm in Shreveport, and I see Cane River Brewery's beer in Shreveport. That's economic development. That's starting in Natchitoches and making other people take your business and wanting your businesses to come there. We've got the people to do it. We've got the talent. We need to nurture them. We need to teach them how to create their own businesses, grow them, and let's be our own economy. Thank you. Want me to say?
Yes, since
Okay.
I almost left you out of the last question, I'll go ahead and let you go first on the next one.
Thank you.
So I think we've got time for two more, so I'm going to go ahead and skip forward to two that we had a lot of interest in and several questions on. One is about crime. There were several questions about crime, police training and reform, and police and community relations. So in your opinion, what can be done to reduce crime in the city of Natchitoches, and what can be done to solve crimes of homicide? So we'll go with you, then Mary Posey, then Mr. Williams.
I think one thing that we can all agree on, obviously, police tactics, and the communities that are policed by our police officers have come to the forefront. When I started this campaign, I talked about community policing. We need to make sure that we are in the communities that are most affected by crime and engendering trust with the people who live in those areas and the police officers who protect and serve them. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I am not for defunding the police. I think that puts too many people in a vulnerable position, one that they will not be able to recover from if they can't call somebody when violent crime is taking place in their neighborhood. However, I do believe that we need to examine the tactics that our police officers use. We need to examine how they are trained, And we need to see if we are asking our police officers to respond to calls that could be better served by somebody else, whether it's a social worker, a mental health specialist, somebody that isn't armed that can go into a situation and de-escalate. We do need that. And I'll tell you, I've met some of the police officers on the city's police department, and I've met many of the police officers in our sheriff's office. We've got some really good people on these forces. And I think if we can work with them and work with our people in community and engender that trust so that there are open lines of communication and there are commanders and police chiefs who are willing to listen when citizens make complaints about officers who aren't upholding the standard of protect and serve, then I think we can get to a place where everybody in Natchitoches, regardless of where you live in the city, can feel safe and be able to point to police officers and say, that's my friend. I hope we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Posey.
Thank you. David touched on something that I think is really important at this particular time in our community, and that's the trust of the community with our police officers. And I've been in here for 8 years. For some reason, in the last 2 years, this is the one when you start talking about our community that I have to admit, our police officers, I back them. I think they're doing a terrific job out there. I think our sheriff's department is. We've just got too many bad people doing bad things in our community. We know, our people know that some people on the streets know what's going on in our community. For some reason, they're not telling us. We've had some good fortune to some of the the homicides. We've been able to catch the people that were doing them. We still got some more work to do but for some reason, in the last 2 years, our homicide rate has risen. There's no doubt about it. The bad crimes are a little bit more than they've been in the past, and we've got to do something about it. We've got to get the community policing, to get the community to trust them is a big factor of this. A lot of these things are in the works. There's some things that we're doing right now I can't say much about because we don't want the bad people to know what we're doing, but we are doing some things that we probably never had to do before. We've got more people on the streets. In my administration in the last 8 years, we have given our police officers 2 different raises, especially our young officers, because what we were doing, we're getting young officers in here, getting them trained. We pay a lot of money to have them trained. Then they were leaving and going to other agencies. So we had to raise our police pay to get that. We're not losing the officers quite like we did. We've got another one. We got to move the police officers up and probably the firemen again, because we do rate studies to find out where our people are compared to the rest of the state. You've got to pay them to keep them. You can't keep losing them to other people. But there's no doubt about it. Crime is one that we're probably going to be working on more than anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Posey. And now we'll hear from Mr. Williams.
The topic of crime is one in which that really motivated me to run for office. I remember a day growing up, and I'm sure many of you who love this community and grew up here, in which you will be surprised if 2 murders happen in a year. We've got a major issue with crime. And what it's going to do, just like we say education, crime will also deter people from coming to our great city and convincing people to continue to live here. I think it is a multifaceted approach that we've got to have. We've got to make sure that we are continually training our officers, not just offering it, but we've got to have real training. I'm an education person, as I said already, and we have, multiple opportunities to train. Even though we've already been through school, we've already learned, there's still continuously something else out there. So yes, we need cultural diversity training. We don't just need to say we're working on it or we're going to get to it. This is something that needs to happen like yesterday. All right. So we got to make sure that we are making an effort to improve community and police officer relations. That's going to take engagement. That's going to take community advisory boards. These things are hard work. It takes time, but it is necessary if we're going to deal with the crime. As I'm going on the, going out and meeting people, the great people, the wonderful people of Natchitoches, at the top of the list of the things that they think that we ought to be doing as a city government is solving these crimes. If we don't solve crimes, it only incentivizes other crimes. So we've got to, and I do agree with what the mayor said, even though it may not be popular in this atmosphere, we got to look at each police department differently. Ours, we're among the lowest in the state. I think we're about $13 an hour starting out. We've got to do better paying our people. We have officers who, you ride by, they live in a housing authority. Now, there's nothing wrong with housing authority, but the fact is you want your officers making enough money, they can have a really good living. And so we can't just talk about it. We've got to actually find the money, write the grants to make sure we're putting our money where our mouth is when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to training, when it comes to the community development, community relations with the police officer.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Did I get everybody this time? I think that's everybody. Okay, so we're going to move on to, I think, the last question, and then we'll move. I might have time for one more after this. Okay, next question is about utilities, and we had a few different people ask about this situation. So several questions regarding the markup of utilities to fund a portion of the city's budget. What are your thoughts on the continuation of this arrangement, and what do you believe is the best use of these funds? And we'll go in this order: Mr. Williams, Mr. Keys, and then Mayor Posey.
Yeah. So when you look at city government, you look at the budget, and I would say about the budget real quick before we get into that particular question is that we've got to make sure that the budget, I'm glad that it's online, we've got to make sure that the budget is a citizen's budget that is easily readable. If we just put a 100-page document electronically, it's just going to scare everybody and not really going to know what it is that they're reading. Now, this issue dealing with utilities is going to affect, and it does affect the bottom line. I believe under Mayor Posey's administration, we had an increase from $110 to around $240 for a connection fee. This affects people, and it affects the poorest among us. So we've got to, again, it goes that word of innovation, goes that word of team building collaboration. We've got to find other ways to raise revenue or spend less money. Folks are tired of money being spent even in local government. Under Mayor Posey's watch, he's created more debt than any mayor in the history of this city. So we've got to make sure that we're not, spending. And a part of that, you have to do those things that are going to cripple people's pocketbook because our spending is not checked. We've got to make sure, and I will make sure, that I'm taking care of your hard-earned tax dollars. So yes, utilities is a concern. We must address it. We've got to look at the budget. We're going to have people around, trained personnel around who's going to help us to address that issue where we can actually make an actual reduction in what utilities are costing people. I think part of that also is making sure that we are, providing opportunities for energy efficiency programs that we're getting those. If I'm mayor, not only am I going to work my butt off, but the people who work for me are going to work their butts off to make sure whatever programs are out there, we can have them right here in Natchitoches. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Keys.
The way I currently understand our agreement in the city utility is that for our electric power, we contract with, I think, Clico, and then we mark up from there. And then the city itself operates sewage and water and gets certified operator. And I've looked at my electric bill, and perused it a couple of times to look at the breakdown. And the water and the sewage always seems to be pretty low. The trash kind of goes up because we partner with a private company to come collect it. And then the electricity always seems to be a little higher than I'd like to. And as Mr. Williams stated, a lot of times people who are a little less fortunate, especially those who live in houses that are not well insulated or they have older air conditioning units, they see electric bills in the $300, $400, $500 range. I think if we maybe decouple from the agreement we have with CLECO and open it up to possibly a private enterprise running the city's electricity without us having to be a middleman who marks up, we could actually make some really good reductions in the people's light bills who really need it. If we can't do that, I agree with Mr. Williams. We need to figure out if there are things that we can cut that are possibly excess. That if we are shifting money from the utility department to these projects, can we cut them? Can we get a saving? Because I agree, at the parish government where I work, our Office of Community Service is constantly inundated with people who need help with their utility. And a lot of that money that the parish government grant program doles out comes right to the city of Natchitoches. That doesn't seem right, especially when it comes from the citizens in Natchitoches seeking that help to turn around and give it right back to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys, and now we'll hear from Mr. Posey.
Thank you. Utilities is something that's, we've had 2 reduction in rate cost since I've been in office. We've negotiated contracts with our provider, who is CLECO. I predict that we will have another rate decrease in this next year. We just found out that a very city in North Louisiana that we compare ourselves to a lot, that I get compared to a lot, we've watched what they just did when they just went out for bid again. It is very competitive. It's one of those things that when I first came in, when they sent a group called LIPA out of Lafayette that keeps up with utility rates. When I used to get the rate study, we were always at the highs. Since we've had those 2 reductions, we are now towards the lower end of that. And I'm proud of that, and I think we're going to do better. The problem we've got is, and I've tried to tell some people, if you've got an energy efficient house, you've got a pretty low utility bill. There's no doubt about it. But we have a lot of people in our community, exactly like David said, that are living in houses that are older, they're built up off the ground. I have encouraged people, I said, please try to weatherproof your house. You can, by what you spend, you can almost save. Now, I'm not real smart in this, but I've had the people that know this, that have told me this, that said, if they would weatherproof their house, they would drop their electrical bills. Now, lately, there was an increase, but we had an unusual situation. We went from a very mild winter that nobody had to use much electricity about anything, and then all of a sudden, we went to some 90-degree, my bill, even at my house, which I consider an energy-efficient house, almost tripled. But it was reasonable, but it did, well, a little bit over double. But anyway, and this hurts the people that can't afford that. I know that. So one of the things I'd love to work with the community on is, if we can do this, is trying to figure out some way with maybe the community services. How do we go in and help people weatherproof their houses? I don't know, but it's something that we've got to look at. The electrical rates in our community are basically a lot lower than they've ever been before. Our water, we found out something with our water and sewer. We did go up on our water and sewer rates and do some things, but we are mandated by law. We had some really low water and sewer rates for a long time, and we found out when we went to Baton Rouge that you cannot do that. Whatever it costs to operate your system, you have to pass on to the customer to be able to operate that system. You're seeing some places in the state of Louisiana that have gotten in a lot of trouble for not doing that. And that's what we cannot afford to do that. So, thank you.
Okay, and Mayor Posey, I'll have you stay up for what will be our last question, and then we'll go into closing remarks. This question is going to be on infrastructure, and we'll go Mr. Posey, Mr. Williams, Mr. Keys. So Natchitoches is 300 years old. Reliable and quality infrastructure is key to attracting new business to Natchitoches. Please describe your intentions and plans regarding the continuation of the repair, replacement, and modernization of the city utilities and roads.
Well, we have been doing that. Like I said in my opening statements, with the rededication of the tax, we have spent money. I think I counted up the other day. We have spent over $20 million in infrastructure in our community. We've addressed sewer, we've addressed water, we've addressed the utility upgrades, we've addressed the roads. That is an awful lot of money. I'm not sure what Mr. Williams meant saying that we were bad in debt. If anybody, any community, if you're progressive, you're going to have some debt. But we're turning that debt into things that we can hopefully turn into economic development. We're doing positive things with it. But we're not any more debt than any community our size and everything. So we're trying to do everything we can with infrastructure. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got more roads to do. There's no doubt about it. We've done, I think, 2 rounds. The first one we did in West Natchitoches, the second one in East Natchitoches with completely new water lines. That's the ones we'll keep doing. That the water lines, we took the worst water in Natchitoches and tried to replace those water lines. We tried to keep up with where our worst places were, and we've done that. We know where the next round is, and we're going to keep moving that way. The first one was about $750,000. This year we'll probably spend at least that much more. We have got to replace our water lines. I tell people all the time, we are a very old community. And I'm probably as guilty, but found this out. We've got to keep up with our infrastructure needs, and we're trying to do that. We're playing a little bit of a catch up, but it's one of the things I tell people is with all of our history in our community, with all the things we got going on, I use the phrase all the time, this is where history meets progress, and we got to keep being progressive, and infrastructure is one that will be utmost on our minds, and we'll keep moving in that direction.
Thank you, Mayor Posey. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Williams.
So when we're speaking of infrastructure, we're talking about, the maintenance of our roads, our bridges, and we were talking about drainage and sewer. Our infrastructure, you're right, we are an old city, so you are going to have some issues with infrastructure. I think what we have to do, we got to actually use the money that we have in a responsible way that is going to build up our infrastructure and, solve the issues that we've got in this particular area. I suppose they mentioned earlier the rededication fund back in 2016, and that's what I was talking about when I said political scheme, same old thing, systems that are being used. People want honest government. People want transparent government. That 2016 rededication was in a very low turnout election. I think you had something like 800 people who voted on that. And what we got to make sure we do, if we're going to be a responsible city government, we've got to make sure we're advertising. We've got to make sure that we are letting people know what these things are about so that more people go. If you are a city of 10,000 registered voters, there should not be around 800 people or so making a decision about how to rededicate money. Because from what I've seen, and this is the issue that I've heard on the campaign trail about Park Natchitoches, and I share some of those sentiments. Park Natchitoches is a wonderful park. It's beautiful. The architect did a great job. And I actually see the mayor's vision. I see that it can become something great. Here's what I say about it, Mr. Mayor. I say that process matters, all right? If there's something as good and as beautiful, and Park Natchitoches is beautiful and it's gonna be very sustainable, it needs a great process to go along with it. People need transparency. And so how the rededication fund or the rededication vote was billed, it listed, and people go by lists, it listed, streets, sewer, drainage, and then parks. I believe that citizens are the owners of the government. You own the government by your vote. You own the government by your tax dollars. And if I'm blessed, fortunate enough to be your mayor, even though it may not be politically smart, you're going to know everything. You're going to know how your money's spent. We're going to have quarterly town halls, all right? So you can ask questions on a Saturday morning, because when we have our meetings now are not feasible for everybody getting off work. I know they're live streamed, but people need to be there. We can have telephone town halls as well. So the thing is, we have to do more about our infrastructure. It's going to help to entice businesses. But not only that, we got to think more about our residents who are already here. We've got some great people, and they don't want to get alignments every 3 months because the roads are so bad. So we've got to make sure we're using the money responsibly.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And finally, we'll hear from Mr. Keys.
Since I work for the parish government and receive most of the phone calls that are complaining about the parish's roads, I feel like this question was directed at me, and I've been up. Our infrastructure is very important. Water and sewage, most of all. Right now, if you're a citizen of the city of Natchitoches and you haven't ventured out onto a parish road to see how bad those are, you don't know how good your roads actually are. But we need to make sure that our sewage and our water remain in good standing, and that the infrastructure to carry those where they need to go and bring the clean water into houses remains intact. And actually, we need to do better than just remains intact. We need to be on the cutting edge of water and sewage delivery and takeout. I've been in several small towns in Louisiana throughout my career. And when you work in a place like Montgomery, Louisiana, and they have a boil advisory every couple of weeks because something went wrong with their water system, or you get out to places like Clarence, Hampton, where sometimes they're unsure if the water that's coming into their house is potable and clean, you realize the need for that. We've got decent roads and we do need to improve them, but we need to make sure that our water and sewage infrastructure is state of the art, so that we're never in a situation where our residents have to go, is the water I'm taking a bath in, drinking, okay? That's what I want to. Thank you.
No, so for final remarks, we're going to go in reverse alpha order. So again, you'll have 3 minutes for closing remarks. So we'll start with Mr. Williams, we'll move on to Mr. Posey, and then finish with Mr. Keith. So closing remarks, Mr. Williams.
You know, as Mr. Keys mentioned earlier, COVID-19 kind of knocked us off balance, and it kind of messed up the flow. But I really, since I began this journey back in January, despite the break because of COVID-19, I've had a wonderful opportunity to learn about the residents of Natchitoches, to learn what their real concerns are. They're concerned about crime. Crime has skyrocketed in these last 8 years. They're concerned about the fact that they're not really sustainable jobs, especially for those of our students who go through Natchitoches Central or St. Mary's. But then once they go through Northwestern, they leave and they take their talent, they take their resources, they take the young years of their life, the prime of their life, to another city. We've got to figure out a way to make sure we're building a community where people want to stay, particularly our own people, our own youth want to stay and build their families here. I want to thank you for your time tonight, and I want to say that if you're looking for an establishment candidate, if you're looking for somebody who's going to do politics as usual, then I'm not your guy. I'm not your man. But if you're looking for integrity, honesty, somebody who will stand firm on principles, somebody who say the truth and won't try to waffle out of it, then I'll be the guy that you're looking for. Another one of those words that I've learned along the campaign trail, the word actually had to look up, term known as cronyism. There are people who are just sick and tired of the cronyism that they perceive to be in our city. By that I mean people holding positions and getting government favors, getting contracts that are not really transparent, all because of who they know, who their family is. But I want to create a contract system whereby everybody can apply and actually has a real shot. As I mentioned, we're going to do town halls. I didn't mention this, an annual state of the city address, where you know exactly how every dollar is being spent. If you want good government, if you want honesty and integrity, if you want to move Natchitoches to that next level, I believe we're on the cusp of. Vote Ronnie Williams Jr., number 168. You can do so this Saturday, beginning this Saturday, June 20th through July 4th, and even on Election Day, July 11th. Let's make our voices heard. Same old politics out of the window.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Now we'll hear from Mayor Posey.
Thank you. This community I am so proud of. I've grown up in this community all my life. I love it. There's nowhere else I want to be. I want to do everything I can to improve our community, make it the best we can. Some of the things that have been set up here tonight, I don't take exception to. I just stand behind what we've done. We have been transparent. We have public hearings all the time, and we can't get people to come to the meetings. I wish more people would come and get involved. We invite them there. I'm not sure what I'm hearing about all this transparency now and some of these backdoor deals. I don't, this is the usual. I'm just saying be careful of some of the politics that happen in the political season. I'll stand behind anything we've done. They've got some flyers out there on me about things right now, and I will meet with anybody at any time to talk about anything because there's always two sides to a story. People are always spinning it the way they want to spin it out there too. We've been recognized. We're the envy of this state. When I go to, we have what's called a mid-city conference. It's all the cities our size. I go to that mid-city conference meeting all the time, and the mayors I see all the time said, "Man, what are y'all doing?" Our people come back to us and say, "Why aren't y'all doing what Natchitoches is doing?" I don't, when you get to the political season, every time you have a race, there's a lot of negatives out there. We have got more positive things going on in this community. Do we have problems? Absolutely, and we've got to address them, and crime is one of them. I'll be the first to admit. But I want to do everything I can to keep us moving in the right direction. I'm proud of our community. The other mayors tell me that. When I'm a person that likes to listen. Well, the favorite thing I do when I go to a mid-city meeting is we have a conference of mayors that sit around and ask questions. I ask them. I'll listen all the time. What makes your community successful? And when I hear ideas, I'll take them and bring them back to our community and try to run with them. And some of the things you've seen happen in our community are those things that have happened. Now, the grave injustice has brought awareness of all injustice to the African American community. We can do better, and we will do better. I've met with a group to consider cultural diversity training in our community. They've already reached out to me with a name. Unbeknownst to me, I found out this is who the school board brought in here a few years ago. I think it's going to be, I know it's going to be done. I think it's going to be mandatory for some groups. We're going to invite anybody that wants to be a part of that because we've got to do better in these areas. The African American community came to me about the flag and the Christmas parade several years ago. We made changes. I didn't do it for political reasons. I did it because it was the right thing to do. I ask our community to stay strong. We will get through this together. I humbly ask for your vote in this upcoming election. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Posey. And finally, we'll hear from David Keys.
I want to start by again thanking the Student Government Association and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this. Y'all have done a fantastic job. Your volunteers, really appreciate y'all giving us the platform to where we can speak to the voters. And to the voters, I thank you for tuning in. It shows that you want to be informed. It shows that you think this is important, and that's great. I consider it a privilege to be running to be your mayor. I consider it an honor to be running, I don't even want to say against, I want to say with Mr. Williams and Mayor Posey for this position. I think you've got three strong candidates to choose from. I don't envy you. I've met Mr. Williams through this campaign, he and his lovely wife, Tiffany. They're fantastic people. Mayor Posey has dedicated a large portion of his life to serving this community through a business, and then several years on the city council, and now as mayor. And then you've got me, and I hope that I can stand just as tall as they can with the work that I've done. I currently work for the parish government, and throughout this COVID-19 experience that we've all gone through, my boss came to me and he said, David, if you'd like to work from home, you can. If you feel like you're nervous about getting sick or getting others sick, you can work from home. And I told him, no. I said, I don't think I'll be as effective if I work from home. And he allowed me, and I went into work every single day since this pandemic started. I've been in the courthouse, fielding phone calls, talking to people about their roads in the parish, helping people get permits. I've helped move the parish forward even in a time of crisis. And I promise you, you elect me as your next mayor, that I will go to work every single day, regardless of the circumstance, to make this city an even better place to live. I started this campaign saying that I'm proud to be Natchitoches because Natchitoches is it. I'm still proud to be Natchitoches. And I hope you consider me as your next mayor on July 11th. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Keys, and thank you to all of our mayoral candidates for participating tonight and participating in the written questionnaire. I will again remind everyone to go check out those written responses at natchitocheschamber.com/candidatesrespond. That is it from our mayoral candidates. We're going to take a brief 5-minute break, and then we'll start with our city council. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back shortly.